The sky was a deep, ominous gray as the army of Frederick Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, trudged through the rugged Italian terrain. It was the year 1166, and Rome, the heart of Christendom, was in turmoil. Pope Alexander III had just returned to the city, and the air was thick with tension. Frederick, with his imposing figure and fiery red beard, was determined to assert his authority over the rebellious Romans. The Battle of Monte Porzio was about to begin, and the fate of Italy hung in the balance. Frederick's troops, battle-hardened and disciplined, moved with a calculated precision. They knew their emperor was a formidable leader, a man who had already been crowned twice, once by the antipope Paschal III. But the Romans were not without their own resolve. They had faced invasions before and were ready to defend their city with every ounce of strength they possessed. The clash was brutal. The sound of clashing swords and the cries of the wounded filled the air. Despite the Romans' valiant efforts, Frederick's army emerged victorious. The emperor stood atop a hill, surveying the carnage below. His triumph was short-lived, however. An epidemic swept through his ranks, forcing him to withdraw his army north of the Alps. The disease was ruthless, claiming the lives of many soldiers and leaving Frederick with a bitter taste of defeat. Years passed, and the emperor's resolve only grew stronger. In 1175, he returned to Italy, determined to crush the pro-papal Lombard League. The Battle of Alessandria was a disaster for Frederick, and the following year at the Battle of Legnano, his army was decisively defeated. The Lombard League's victory forced Frederick to the negotiating table. The Peace of Anagni, signed with Pope Alexander III and the Lombard League, marked a significant setback for the emperor's ambitions. But Frederick's story was far from over. In 1189, a new challenge emerged. Pope Gregory VIII, eager to secure the Holy Land, called for the Third Crusade. Frederick, along with Richard the Lionheart of England and King Philippe II of France, answered the call. Their journey was fraught with danger, and when they reached Constantinople, they discovered that Emperor Isaac II had alerted Saladin and the Ayyubids to their presence. Undeterred, the Crusaders pressed on. The journey was arduous, and the road to the Holy Land was filled with obstacles. As they crossed the Salif River, Frederick, determined to avoid the congested bridge, walked his horse into the water. The fast current was unforgiving, sweeping the horse off its feet and drowning the emperor. The news of Frederick's death sent shockwaves through the Crusader camp. In a desperate attempt to preserve his memory, Frederick's body was preserved in vinegar. However, the body disintegrated, and his flesh was interred in Antioch, his bones in Tyre, and his organs in Tarsus. The loss of Frederick Barbarossa was a heavy blow to the Crusade. The once mighty emperor who had dreamed of restoring the Roman Empire was now nothing more than a memory. But the story of his empire and his successors was far from over. His son, Heinrich VI, would face his own challenges and triumphs, continuing the legacy of a dynasty that would shape the course of European history for generations to come. In the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, the land of Bohemia stood as a powerful duchy, bordered by Poland to the northeast, Hungary to the southeast, and Austria to the south. This region was a melting pot of political intrigue, power struggles, and dynastic rivalries that shaped the course of Central European history. Bretislav I, the Duke of Bohemia, was a force to be reckoned with. He captured Silesia from Poland, but was driven out by Heinrich III of Germany in 1040. To avoid further conflict, Bretislav agreed to pay an annual fee to the Poles. His son, Spytnev II, took the throne in 1055 and immediately expelled all Germans from his lands, stripping his brothers of their rights. However, when Spytnev died in 1061, his brother Vratislav II inherited the dukedom and ruled with a strong hand. Vratislav supported Emperor Heinrich IV, who in turn crowned him King of Bohemia, though the title was not hereditary. Vratislav's reign was marked by his support for the emperor, including helping Heinrich defeat anti-King Rudolf of Swabia and accompanying him to Rome in 1083. However, in his later years, Vratislav's son Bretislav turned against him, forcing him into exile, where he died while out hunting. After Vratislav's death, his brother Conrad ruled briefly, but Bretislav seized control and began a campaign to stamp out paganism, hoping to win favor with Rome. He made his half-brother Borovage a duke in 1097, disinheriting Conrad's son, Oldrich. Oldrich, filled with resentment, assassinated Bretislav and claimed the throne. Borovage, seeking support, turned to Emperor Heinrich IV, and together they forced Oldrich to flee. The political landscape of Bohemia was further complicated by the Polish succession dispute. Borovage and his cousin Svatopluk initially supported Zbigniew of Poland but switched sides when Boleslaw III offered them a bribe. Svatopluk, however, betrayed his pledge to Heinrich IV and helped Heinrich V usurp the throne in 1105. He captured Borovage with the help of Heinrich's brother, Vladislav, and the power struggle continued. The Hungarian succession in 1108 brought another round of conflicts. Svatopluk supported Almos, Duke of Croatia, while Borovage and Boleslaw III of Poland backed Almos's brother Konevs. The emperor and Svatopluk invaded Poland to support Zbigniew, and during the Battle of Głogów, Svatopluk executed a member of the Bosnian Viersavis family for supporting Borovage. In retaliation, a relative of the executed man murdered Svatopluk in the emperor's tent. Vladislav and Borovage tried to rule jointly, but their partnership was short-lived. Borovage fled to Hungary, leaving Vladislav to rule alone. Sobslav I, Borovage's younger brother, returned from exile to take the throne after Vladislav's death in 1125. However, he faced a challenge from Svatopluk's brother, Otto II of Olomouc, who had German support. Sobslav exiled Otto II, but Holy Roman Emperor Lothar III invaded Bohemia, using the imperial investiture as an excuse. Otto II was killed at the Battle of Klumek in 1126, and Lothar, who had been captured, was released after promising to support the investiture. Sobslav's nephew Bretislav conspired against his uncle, and was blinded for his treachery. Sobslav ruled until his death in 1140, when Emperor Lothar II recognized Sobslav's son, Vladislav, as the rightful heir. However, the Bohemian nobles rejected him, and with the help of Conrad III of Germany, they appointed Conrad's nephew, also named Vladislav, as Vladislav II, Duke of Bohemia. Vladislav II captured Prague with Conrad's help, and later joined his uncle on the Second Crusade. Vladislav II was crowned King of Bohemia in 1158 for his support in the Crusade, but he abdicated in favor of his son Bedřich in 1172 without the emperor's permission. Emperor Friedrich deposed Bedřich and nominated Oldrich, Sobslav's son, as the new ruler. Oldrich, however, stepped down in favor of the imprisoned Sobslav II, who became known as the King of the Peasants. Sobslav II's rule was short-lived, and he was eventually excommunicated by Pope Alexander III. The emperor and Bedřich counterattacked, and Sobslav was exiled, allowing Bedřich to reclaim the throne. In 1182, Conrad II, son of Conrad I, seized control of Bohemia and helped the emperor's son, Heinrich, capture Sicily on behalf of Heinrich's wife, Costanza. Conrad died of the plague in Naples, and Sobslav II's brother, Vaclav II, returned from exile to claim the throne. However, he was deposed after only 3 months by Friedrich's half-brother Ottokar. Vaclav sought help from the emperor, but was imprisoned instead. Ottokar, unable to pay Bohemia's debts to the Holy Roman Empire, saw his chief supporter, Bretislav, taken hostage by Heinrich VI. Heinrich invaded Bohemia, deposed Ottokar, and appointed Bretislav III in 1193, leaving Vaclav to die in prison. Vladislav III, Ottokar's brother, was elected in 1197 and blinded his opponent Spydinev. The emperor, displeased with Vladislav's actions, decided to restore Ottokar to the throne. Vladislav abdicated, and Ottokar was formally acknowledged as King of Bohemia by Philip of Swabia, King of the Romans. Ottokar's reign was marked by his involvement in the German Civil War. He supported Emperor Otto IV in 1226, leading to an attack on Austria when Friedrich II of Austria revoked the betrothal of his daughter to the emperor's son. Emperor Friedrich then prevented Friedrich of Austria from marrying his daughter to Henry III of England, and she chose to enter a convent to avoid further offers. Ottokar was overthrown for joining a German conspiracy to bring down the Hohenstaufen monarchy. His successor, his son Vaclav the One-Eyed, had to provide troops for Emperor Friedrich II's attack on the Lombard League in Italy. When the emperor placed an imperial ban on Austria, Václav responded by allying with Friedrich of Austria and Bavaria in 1237. The emperor lifted the ban, and when he was excommunicated in 1239, everyone abandoned him. Central European politics changed dramatically in 1241, when the Mongols invaded Eastern Europe. They swept through Bohemia, forcing Václav to regroup after a defeat at Legnica. The Mongols then turned around and headed home, leaving the impression that they had been defeated. Ottokar II the Iron of Austria was elected King of Bohemia in 1253. Known as the Golden King, he was more interested in hunting and drinking than in his wife. He defeated a Hungarian army at the Battle of Kressenbrunn in 1260, and Bela IV of Hungary offered his granddaughter in marriage to make peace. Ottokar immediately divorced the elderly Marguerite and married the young Cunegunda. Ottokar II led 2 crusades against the pagan Old Prussians, hoping to be elected emperor for his efforts. However, Rudolf of Germany besieged Vienna in 1276 and forced Ottokar to give up all his territories except Bohemia and Moravia. Ottokar had to betroth his son Václav to Rudolf's daughter Gutta Judith to make peace. Infuriated, Ottokar counterattacked, but was killed at the battle on the Marchfeld in 1278. Otto of Brandenburg became regent for young Václav II, but his mother, Cunegunda, and her new husband, Zavas, interfered with the running of the state. Václav had Zavas beheaded for treason as soon as he came of age. Pierre Przemysl II of Poland ceded Krakow to Václav in 1291, and he became overlord of Poland after the High Duke's death in 1296. Václav was crowned King of Poland in 1300, and his reign was bolstered by the discovery of the Bohemian Kutna-Hora silver mines, which produced 20 tons of silver annually. Václav II's young son, also named Václav, was betrothed to Andras III's daughter, Elizabeth of Tos, in 1298, and became King of Hungary under the name Ladislaus V in 1301. Many Hungarian nobles preferred Károly Robert of Anjou, so the younger Václav asked his father for help. Father and son returned to Bohemia with the Hungarian crown, leaving Ivan of Gussing behind to represent them. Václav II died in 1305, and his son, now Václav III of Bohemia, broke off his engagement to Elizabeth, renounced the Hungarian throne, and relinquished the crown. He focused on claiming his hereditary right to Poland, but upset many by making Jindřich of Carinthia regent of Bohemia in his absence and marrying Jindřich to his sister Anna. Václav was assassinated in 1306, and Jindřich was elected King of Bohemia and titular King of Poland. Albrecht of Germany wanted control of Bohemia, so he captured Prague and crowned his son Rudolf, who died soon after. Jindřich was re-elected, but Albrecht's second attack failed, and the Habsburg dynasty fell apart when Albrecht was assassinated in 1308. Heinrich VII of Germany also sought control of Bohemia and married his son Jan to the late Václav's sister, Elizabeth of Bohemia, in 1310. Jan deposed Jindřich for a second time, but the Bohemian nobility hated the new king, so he left his wife and went traveling. He fought with the Teutonic Knights against Poland until its king, Casimir III the Great, paid him to renounce his claim to the Polish throne. Jan's eyesight was failing, but he still fought alongside Philippe VI of France at the Battle of Crécy in 1346. He had his reins tied to his supporters' horses and said, "Let it never be the case that a Bohemian king runs." Jan the Blind was found dead with his men. Jan's injured son, Karol, escaped from the battlefield and returned home to be crowned king. He was also elected Holy Roman Emperor, after making huge concessions to Rome, and became known as the Priest's King. A civil war was only averted because his rival, Louis the Bavarian, was killed during a bear hunt. Karol IV then had to administer the empire during the Black Death, moving his capital to Prague because it had not been affected by the plague. Karol was re-elected in 1349 and crossed the Alps without an army in 1356, receiving the Lombard crown as a reward. In the same year, he issued the Golden Bull, designed to regulate the election of the King of the Romans. Casimir III of Poland, Louis I of Hungary, and Otto V of Bavaria conspired against him. So Karol revoked the privileges of the imperial cities to ensure his teenage son, Václav, the idol, would be elected King of the Romans in 1376. Vaclav was indeed idle after inheriting the Bohemian throne because his father had split his lands between his sons and relatives, leaving him with none of his own. He had to defeat an alliance of imperial cities, known as the Swabian League, and was then arrested by the Bohemian nobles in 1394, with his cousin Jobst of Moravia named regent. Vaclav's brother Zikmund of Hungary made peace with Bohemia in 1396, in return for recognition as heir to the Bohemian throne. Vaclav was accused of protecting the religious reformer Jan Hus and his heretic followers. He also failed to visit his German lands, and was consequently deposed in 1402. Emperor Zikmund was king of Hungary, Croatia, Germany, and Bohemia, when he opened the Council of Constance in Germany in 1414 to discuss the schism. He invited Jan Hus to attend, offering him safe conduct, but Hus was arrested and burned at the stake, leading to the two-decade Hussite Wars. Vaclav died during a hunt in 1419, and Zikmund entrusted the running of the kingdom to Vaclav's widow, Zofie. The Bohemians believed Zikmund had betrayed Jan Hus. It took 17 years before they acknowledged him as their king, and he had little power. Albrecht the Magnanimous of Austria was elected king of Bohemia in 1438, but was unable to defeat the Bohemians and their Polish allies. He died defending Hungary from the Ottomans in 1439, and his son, Ladislaus the Posthumous, was born 4 months later. Jiří of Podbrad's Hussites had already seized Prague, and Emperor Friedrich III, as young Ladislaus's guardian, entrusted the administration of Bohemia to Jiří until Ladislaus was crowned in 1453. The teenage king died mysteriously in 1458, and while some thought Jiří had poisoned him, it was later discovered he had died from leukemia, an unknown disease at the time. Despite opposition from Pope Pius II, Bohemia chose Jiří of Podbrad as their king. He declared that all Christian kingdoms should settle their differences through a parliament and prepare to fight the abominable Turk, who had conquered Constantinople in 1453. Pope Pius II opposed the treaty, and his successor, Pope Paul II, excommunicated Jiří and gave Hungary permission to invade Bohemia. Matthias Hunyadi, king of Hungary and Croatia, captured large parts of the country by the time a truce was made in 1470. Jiří died soon after, and his followers supported teenage Vladislav II, son of Kazimierz IV of Poland, because they wanted a young king they could control. The 1479 Peace of Olomouc allowed Matthias Hunyadi to rule Moravia, Silesia, and the Lusatias, while Vladislav ruled Bohemia. Matthias died in 1490, and the Hungarian nobility forced his illegitimate son János into exile. They crowned Vladislav, who was the nephew of the long-dead king Ladislaus the Posthumous, and he lived in Hungary for the rest of his life. He became depressed after the death of his third wife, and left the barons to make most of the decisions. His nickname was Benny because he answered most requests with the Latin word fine. In 1177, Luitpold V the Virtuous succeeded his father as Duke of Austria. He quickly became a key supporter of Friedrich, helping him in his struggle for control of Bohemia against Sobslav II. Luitpold's diplomatic skills were put to the test when he negotiated the 1186 Georgenberg Pact, which successfully integrated Styria into Austria. This pact also called for the division of the realm, with Friedrich I receiving Austria and Luitpold VI getting Styria. Luitpold joined the Third Crusade, taking command of the siege of Acre after the death of Friedrich VI, Duke of Swabia, in 1191. The siege was brutal, and when Luitpold removed his blood-soaked tunic, a white stripe where his belt had been was visible. This led to the adoption of the white and red colors as Austria's new flag. Despite Acre's surrender, Luitpold's colors were removed from the city walls by Richard of England, which infuriated him. On his way home, Richard passed through Austria, and Luitpold, still vengeful, arrested him, accusing him of murdering Conrad of Jerusalem. Pope Celestine III excommunicated Luitpold for imprisoning a crusader, but Emperor Heinrich VI paid a large ransom to free Richard. Luitpold used the ransom money to build new walls for Vienna and establish a city mint. Tragically, Luitpold was killed in 1194 after a horse crushed his foot during a tournament, leading to gangrene. After Luitpold's death, his son Luitpold VI the Glorious took control of all Austria. He continued his father's legacy by joining the fight against the Almohads in the Iberian Peninsula and the Albigensians in southern France in 1212. He then joined the Fifth Crusade in 1217. Friedrich II, the Quarrelsome, succeeded Luitpold in 1230. However, he refused to attend the imperial diets and supported Heinrich of Germany's rebellion against his father, Emperor Friedrich. As a result, the emperor allowed Vaclav I of Bohemia to invade Austria in 1235. The emperor's son, Conrad, was given most of the duchy, and Vienna became an imperial free city. Realizing the gravity of his situation, Friedrich changed his stance, became the emperor's ally, and was given his territories back. In 1245, Friedrich married his niece Gertrude to Conrad IV to form an alliance with Germany. However, the 50-year-old Conrad refused to consummate the marriage with the young Gertrude, thwarting the alliance. Friedrich the Quarrelsome was killed in 1246 while fighting Bela IV of Hungary along the Leitha River. Ottokar II of Bohemia seized Austria in 1253, but he refused to recognize Rudolf I when he was elected King of Germany. Rudolf allied with Ladislaus IV of Hungary, while Ottokar allied with Poland and rebellious German princes. Ottokar was killed at the battle on the Marchfeld in 1278, and Rudolf took control of Austria, giving his sons the Austrian and Styrian duchies. Young Rudolf the Debonair was forced to hand over his share to Albrecht under the 1283 Treaty of Rheinfelden, and died shortly after his son Johann was born. Rudolf I tried to secure Albrecht's election before he died, but Count Adolf of Nassau was elected in 1292. Adolf tried to ally with Vaclav II of Poland, but was replaced by King Albrecht of Germany in 1298, and was killed at the Battle of Galheim. Pope Boniface VIII recognized Albrecht's appointment in 1303, and Albrecht, in turn, recognized the authority of the Pope, and was bestowed with an imperial crown. Albrecht invaded Bohemia and besieged Prague after Vaclav III, King of Hungary, Bohemia, and Poland, was assassinated in 1306. He expelled the unpopular Henry of Carinthia and married his son, Rudolf III the Good, to Vaclav II's widow, Elizabeth. However, Rudolf III died a few months later, and Henry was restored. Meanwhile, Albrecht was murdered by his nephew, Johann the Parricide, who sought revenge for his father being forced to hand over his inheritance under the Treaty of Rheinfelden. Adolf's son, Friedrich the Handsome, was forced to give up his claim to the German crown. He invaded Bavaria when Heinrich VII was crowned emperor in 1312, but was defeated by Ludwig of Bavaria at the Battle of Gamelsdorf in 1313. Friedrich's co-ruler, Luitpold I the Glorious, accompanied Heinrich when he invaded Italy, but Heinrich died before the campaign ended. Friedrich was successful in the first imperial vote, but Ludwig IV of Wittelsbach won the second vote, so Friedrich was crowned anti-king. He was defeated by the Swiss Confederacy at the Battle of Morgarten in 1315, and then defeated and captured by Ludwig, along with 1,300 nobles, at the Battle of Muhldorf in 1322. Luitpold handed over the imperial regalia to Ludwig IV, but the nobles remained in prison, and the fighting continued until the 1325 Treaty of Trosnitz. Luitpold recognized Ludwig as his emperor, and Friedrich was released. However, their brother, Heinrich, refused to submit, so a defeated Luitpold voluntarily returned to prison. Impressed by Luitpold's gesture, Ludwig agreed to share rule of the empire. Pope John XXII and the prince-electors rejected the idea, so Ludwig was crowned Holy Roman Emperor, and Friedrich was made regent of Germany as a compromise. Friedrich withdrew from the regency of Germany to rule Austria when Luitpold died. In 1330, Albrecht II the Wise became joint ruler with his brother Otto the Merry, known for his lively court life. Albrecht was asked to mediate in the conflict between Pope Benedict XII and Emperor Ludwig in 1335, while Otto founded the Societas Tempelhof to organize crusades against the pagan Prussians and Lithuanians. However, Otto died in 1339, and his teenage sons, Luitpold and Friedrich, died 5 years later, leaving their uncle Albrecht under suspicion of poisoning them. Rudolf IV became Duke of Austria, Styria, and Carinthia, when his father Albrecht died in 1358. Austria had not been given an electoral vote in Emperor Karl IV's Golden Bull, so Rudolf forged the Privilegium Maius, giving him equal powers with the Holy Roman Empire's 7 prince-electors. He also called himself Archduke, a title others used to refer to him as the founder of Austria. Rudolf married Katharina of Luxembourg, Emperor Karl's daughter, creating a mutual assured inheritance between the Habsburg and Luxembourg dynasties. He made an inheritance contract with the widowed Countess of Gorizia Tyrol, expecting to bring Tyrol under his rule when she died, but he died before she did. Rudolf's brothers, Luitpold III and Albrecht III, ruled jointly until they divided Austria under the 1379 Treaty of Neuburg. This treaty decreed that Luitpold's descendants would receive further Austria, West, and Tyrol, while Albrecht's descendants would receive lower, northeast Austria. Duke Luitpold the just campaigned in Switzerland and Swabia until he was killed at the Battle of Sempach in 1386, leaving his 4 sons to argue over his lands. His eldest, Wilhelm the Courteous, had wanted to marry Hedwig of Hungary to take control of her kingdom, but she became Queen Regnant of Poland instead. He married Giovanna of Naples, hoping to secure her inheritance, but he died in 1406 before she succeeded her brother. Wilhelm left no sons, so his brother Leopold IV the Fat became head of the family and argued with the third brother, Ernst the Iron, over the guardianship of their young cousin Albrecht V, heir to the Albrecht line. Leopold failed to take control of Lower Austria before he died in 1411, leaving no heir. Ernst the Iron became head of the family, calling himself Archduke, the first Habsburg to do so. Meanwhile, Friedrich, the fourth brother, had trouble controlling the nobles in his part of Austria and was called Empty Pockets. Friedrich sided with antipope John XXIII at the 1417 Council of Constance, so Emperor Siegmund placed him under an imperial ban. Ernst failed to capture Tyrol, and Friedrich succeeded him when he died in 1424. Friedrich IV's rule was secured when silver was found in the Tyrol the following year. Siegmund came to his father's throne in 1439 and was crowned Duke of Austria and ruler of Tyrol when he came of age 7 years later. Pope Pius II excommunicated him when he imprisoned Bishop Nicolaus of Cusa over a territorial dispute, but he was made an archduke by Friedrich III in 1477. Siegmund became known as the Rich when new technology allowed the Tyrol silver mines to reopen. He became even richer when he seized the Venetian silver mines in the War of Roverito in 1487. However, the people of Tyrol forced Siegmund to hand power to Maximilian I in 1490. Albrecht with the pigtail focused on crusading against Lithuanian pagans, and was briefly succeeded by his son Albrecht IV the Patient. His son, Albrecht V, was looked after by his uncles from the Leopold line, Leopold and Ernst, who tried in vain to appropriate his lands until he came of age. Albrecht V, the magnanimous, supported his father-in-law Siegmund of Hungary in the Hussite wars, and was present when the Hussites defeated the imperial army at Damascus in 1431. Siegmund died in 1437, and Albrecht moved to Budapest to be crowned King of Hungary. He was also crowned King of Bohemia 6 months later, but the Bohemians and their Polish allies refused to accept him, so he refused to be King of the Romans. Albrecht was killed at the Battle of Nesmili in 1439, defending Hungary from the Ottomans. Albrecht's son, Ladislaus the Posthumous, was born 4 months later, and his mother, Elizabeth, took him and Hungary's crown to Austria. Unfortunately, Friedrich IV of Germany and Austria imprisoned her baby and took the crown for himself. Hungary chose Ladislaus to be their king when Vladislav I was killed fighting the Ottomans at the Battle of Varna in 1444. But Friedrich still refused to surrender the child and the crown. Friedrich signed the 1448 Vienna Concordat, which regulated the relationship between the Habsburgs and the Holy See, and Pope Nicholas V crowned him Emperor Friedrich III in 1452. He would be the last emperor crowned in Rome. The Austrians joined the Mailberg Confederation, and young Ladislaus, the Posthumous of Austria, Hungary, and Bohemia, was finally released. The teenage Ladislaus did nothing when the Ottomans attacked Hungary. After Ladislaus Hunyadi of Hungary was executed, Ladislaus the Posthumous fled to Prague and died suddenly in 1457. Poisoning was suspected, but he had actually died of leukemia. Friedrich the Peaceful invaded Bohemia in 1468, but had failed to conquer it by 1478 because Hungary joined the Bohemian War. Friedrich forced Charles the Bold of Burgundy to marry his daughter to Friedrich's son, Maximilian, to end the siege of Neuss in 1475. Marriage had won where military action had not, and the motto of Friedrich's dynasty became "Let others wage wars, but you, happy Austria, shall marry." Friedrich was defeated by Matthias Hunyadi in the 1485 Austrian-Hungarian War. He had only just had Vienna restored to him when he bled to death in 1493, after the amputation of his leg went wrong. He was succeeded by his son, Maximilian I the Last Knight, with whom he had shared rule for 10 years. The conflicts between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire were intense and often violent during the 12th and 13th centuries. One of the most significant disputes was the Investiture Controversy, which began when Pope Paschal II refused to attend a council in Germany to discuss the issue. In retaliation, Heinrich V seized Rome, exiled Paschal, and appointed Antipope Sylvester IV. Heinrich forced a discussion and agreed to renounce the right of investiture in exchange for a promise of coronation. However, neither side kept their promises, and Heinrich eventually arrested Paschal and forced 16 cardinals to crown him emperor in 1111. This led to Paschal excommunicating Heinrich for his heavy-handed methods. The next pope, Gelasius II, was captured and imprisoned by Heinrich V's supporters when he entered Rome. They freed Gelasius, who then fled to France when Heinrich arrived. In France, Gelasius excommunicated both Heinrich and the antipope Gregory VIII before he died in 1119. The Treaty of Worms in 1122, negotiated by Pope Calixtus II and Heinrich V, aimed to resolve the controversy. They agreed that the clergy would elect bishops, and imperial legates would approve them. However, the Normans were advancing in southern Italy, and Antipope Gregory VIII was driven from Rome. Despite this, both Calixtus II and Heinrich died soon after, leaving the situation unresolved. Honorius II and Celestine II were both chosen as pope in 1124, but Honorius was ultimately selected. He worked for papal supremacy and a Christian alliance for a holy war, supporting Lothar of Saxony against Conrad of Swabia. Roger of Sicily continued to expand his control over southern Italy, and a sick Honorius was forced to confirm Roger's investiture before he died in 1130. In 1130, Pope Innocent II fled to France when Anacletus II became Lord of Rome. Lothar of Saxony led Innocent back into the city, and Lothar was crowned emperor in return for acknowledging his subservience to the pope. When Anacletus died, Antipope Victor IV resigned, and Innocent declared war on Sicily, excommunicating Roger of Sicily before he was taken prisoner. Innocent also excommunicated Louis VII of France for following the heretical doctrines of Peter Abelard. However, when Celestine II was appointed, he withdrew the excommunication. Celestine had to escape to a fortified monastery when Rome was seized and died there. Pope Lucius II, who was pope for only a year, fought against Giordano Pierleone's government when it abolished the pope's temporal power. He was mortally injured during a riot. Pope Eugene III, elected in 1145, had no say in Rome's administration and focused on recruiting Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany for the Second Crusade, which ended in disaster at Damascus. Eugene also called for a crusade against the Almoravids, and Portugal, Castile, and Aragon signed the 1151 Treaty of Tudela, defining their zones of conquest. Frederick Barbarossa, who succeeded Conrad III in 1152, upset Rome by forgetting to ask Pope Eugene III for confirmation of his appointment. He had to promise to defend the honor of the Church by capturing Rome, and refused to ally with Roger II of Sicily to make amends. With this, Eugene promised him a coronation and the honor of the empire. Eugene built a new palace, which became the basis for the Vatican palaces, and approved the formation of the Knights of Malta before he died in 1153. An elderly pope, Anastasius IV, was elected but died only a few months later. Pope Adrian IV, the only English pope in history, was elected in 1154. He immediately hanged and burned the anti-papist Arnaldo da Brescia for calling on the Church to renounce its properties. Adrian allied the Vatican States with the Byzantines against Sicily, and encouraged Byzantine Emperor Manuel I to attack Sicily. However, he confirmed Guglielmo's title, after Guglielmo defeated the Byzantines. Adrian then upset Frederick Barbarossa by implying that the empire was a fief of the papacy. Frederick invaded Italy in 1158, and refused to hold the stirrups of Adrian's horse when they met. Adrian refused to give Friedrich the kiss of pardon. Friedrich was eventually crowned emperor and claimed exclusive rights to Rome. Adrian died before he could excommunicate him. Pope Alexander III, elected in 1159, opposed Frederick Barbarossa, who appointed Antipope Victor IV. Alexander excommunicated both Friedrich and Victor, and searched for allies. Friedrich appointed Antipope Paschal III in 1164, and invaded Italy when Alexander returned to Rome, defeating the Romans at the Battle of Monte Porzio. Antipope Calixtus III submitted to Pope Alexander 10 years later. The Lombard League defeated Friedrich at the Battle of Legnano in 1176. Friedrich visited Rome, prostrated himself, and renounced all imperial claims. But Alexander put his foot on Friedrich's head and said, "Thou shalt crush the asp and the basilisk underfoot." Insulted, Friedrich switched his support to Antipope Innocent III, who died a year later. Pope Lucius III was elected and forced to leave Rome, never to return. Friedrich refused to help him because Lucius would not crown his son Heinrich VI. In absentia, Lucius declared a war on heresies across Roman Catholic Europe, which grew into the Inquisition. Pope Urban III opposed the marriage between Emperor Friedrich's son and Roger of Sicily's daughter, to prevent the Holy Roman Empire and Sicily from joining forces. He was en route to Venice to excommunicate Friedrich when he heard that Saladin had captured Jerusalem. Urban died soon after. Pope Gregory VIII failed to get the emperor or the North Italian states to join the Third Crusade before he died, but Pope Clement III secured the participation of Philippe of France and Richard of England, along with Venice, Pisa, and Genoa. The Third Crusade collapsed when Frederick Barbarossa drowned in Anatolia in 1191. Pope Celestine III crowned Tancredi's young son Guglielmo III of Sicily, prompting Emperor Heinrich VI to invade Italy, believing the Sicilian throne was his wife Costanza's inheritance. An epidemic forced him to break his siege of Naples, and Costanza, who had been kidnapped, was released before she could be delivered to Rome. Heinrich died unexpectedly in 1197, possibly poisoned, and Celestine died in 1198. Pope Innocent III's first act was to urge King Imre of Hungary to stamp out Bogomilism. He proclaimed Friedrich II king of Sicily, and gave the emperor's crown to Otto of Brunswick to divide power between them. He excommunicated Otto for not keeping the faith, England's King John for rejecting the Pope's choice for the Archbishop of Canterbury, Philippe II of France for refusing to reinstate his wife, and Alfonso IX for being married to his cousin. Innocent also proposed the Fourth Crusade, which ended in disaster in 1202, and the Albigensian Crusade, which stamped out the Cathar heresy in southern France. Innocent's envoys visited Galicia-Volhynia in 1204, but when they promised to place its prince, Roman the Great, under the protection of St. Peter's sword, he replied, "Is the Pope's sword similar to mine? So long as I carry mine, I need no other." However, Innocent was pleased to hear that Leszek of Poland had pledged himself to Rome. Innocent organized the Fifth Crusade, but was disappointed when Leszek refused to participate because there was no beer for the Polish knights in Palestine. He was also frustrated that Bosnia was still a Bogomil stronghold. Innocent brokered peace between the Byzantines and Bulgaria, offering to crown Kaloyan of Bulgaria to unite the Bulgarian Church with Rome. Innocent died from malaria before the Fifth Crusade began in 1216. Pope Honorius III crowned Friedrich II on the promise that he would cede the kingdom of Sicily to a relative and lead the Fifth Crusade. When Friedrich failed to keep his pledge, the crusade failed. Young Heinrich VII was elected King of Germany in 1220, but Honorius refused to recognize the election and deprived him of his Sicilian rights to prevent Germany and Sicily from uniting. James II of Aragon seized the kingdom of Sicily, despite promising he would not, and the war only ended because a plague decimated Charles de Valois' army. Honorius gave the Teutonic Knights equal status with the Knights Templar and Knights Hospitaller because their Grand Master, Hermann von Salza, helped in discussions with the emperor. Friedrich's crusade began in 1227, but it was turned back after an epidemic struck the Crusaders. Disappointed, Pope Gregory IX excommunicated Friedrich. The emperor organized another attempt the following year, only to be excommunicated again for crusading while excommunicated. A third excommunication followed in 1239, because Friedrich did not leave Sicily when he had promised. Pope Gregory IX died in 1241, at almost 100 years old. The next election took so long that the cardinals were locked in conclave, means with key, for several weeks. One cardinal died, and many fell ill, including the winner, Celestine IV, who died only 17 days later. It took 2 years to elect Pope Innocent IV, who immediately fled to France and excommunicated the emperor. Meanwhile, the Mongols were riding across Europe, and Innocent was unable to help Poland or Hungary because of Rome's war with Friedrich. Innocent IV appointed Heinrich VI as anti-king, and declared a deposed Friedrich a friend of Babylon's Sultan in 1245. The dispute only ended when Friedrich died in 1250, and Innocent returned to Italy. Innocent sought to spread Christianity by any means necessary, trying to ally with the new Grand Khan monk to foster Christianity among the Mongols. He also sanctioned the Seventh Crusade, on which Louis IX of France was captured in Egypt, and forced to hand over all his money to pay the ransom. In 1253, Daniel of Galicia became the first king of Rus, and captured Galicia after it had been ravaged by the Mongols. Innocent only sent a representative crown, meaning Daniel had no support from the rest of Europe. He had no option but to pay tribute to the Mongols to stop them from returning. Innocent sold Sicily to Edmund Crouchback, son of Henry III of England, but the English barons refused to pay for the crown, and Manfredi of Sicily refused to stand down. Manfredi was excommunicated and handed over Apulia to Rome, but it was not enough. He raised Islamic support from North Africa, and defeated a papal army at Foggia in 1254. News of the defeat reached Innocent on his deathbed. Pope Alexander IV crowned Manfredi, but excommunicated him when he failed to pay for the privilege. Alexander put the Sicilian crown up for offer, but Richard of Cornwall turned it down, saying, "You might as well say, 'I make you a present of the moon, step up to the sky and take it down.'" Charles of Anjou, Louis IX of France's brother, bought the crown from Pope Urban IV in 1262, on the condition that he would not unite with the emperor. Charles defeated and killed Manfredi at Benevento, and captured young Corradino, the heir to the Sicilian throne, beheading him in 1266, despite the Pope's protest. Charles then took control of Apulia and Sicily, paying the Church to seal his authority over his new kingdom. Pope Clement IV inspired the Eighth Crusade, this time against North Africa. Louis IX died of plague in Tunis. Edward I of England arrived too late to make a difference, and Charles of Anjou's fleet was ravaged by a storm. The conclave that elected Pope Gregory X dragged on for 3 years when the people lost patience and took the roof off the election hall in 1272, forcing a decision. 2 years later, Gregory convened the Council of Lyon to liberate the Holy Land. Emperor Mikhail VIII asked for help against the Mongol invasion of the Byzantine Empire, and suggested uniting the Western and Eastern churches in return. Gregory believed Charles of Anjou had too much power, so he restored the German Empire and did not crown anyone until he offered it to Rudolf of Habsburg 20 years later. Innocent V, briefly Pope in 1276, sought a settlement with Charles of Anjou while stopping Rudolf of Habsburg from entering Italy. Adrian V was Pope for even less time, and his successor, John XXI, also failed to get an agreement between Charles of Anjou and Rudolf of Habsburg. John was frail and elderly and retired to Viterbo, where a roof collapse killed him rather than old age. Pope Nicholas III discussed splitting the Holy Roman Empire into 4 kingdoms: Lombardy, Burgundy, Tuscia, and Germany, with Rudolf taking the hereditary emperor's title. He spent a fortune on buildings while promoting his relatives, and Charles of Anjou rigged the next election. Pope Martin IV excommunicated Pedro of Aragon for seizing Sicily, and offered Aragon to Charles de Valois, providing he could capture it. Martin also excommunicated Emperor Mikhail VIII for opposing Charles's attempt to take over the Latin Empire. Martin died in 1285, and Pope Honorius IV also refused to recognize Pedro of Aragon as King of Sicily, excommunicating his wife Costanza and his son James as extra punishment. Pope Nicholas IV was elected in 1288, and while he failed to drum up support for a new crusade to the Holy Land, he promoted missionary work among the Mongol. He crowned Charles de Valois King of Sicily in 1289, and excommunicated Alfonso III of Aragon. giving Charles a reason to revive the Aragonese Crusade. Pope Celestine V was elected in 1294, but became a hermit after failing to get his reforms through, and was then imprisoned and died in Fiumone Castle. Boniface VIII drew up the 1295 Treaty of Anagni, but Friedrich refused to agree to it, and was crowned King Friedrich III of Sicily 2 years later. The Pope excommunicated Frederick Barbarossa for supporting antipope Victor IV, and Heinrich IV for imprisoning the Crusader Richard the Lionheart of England. He would excommunicate Friedrich II 4 times. King Adolf of Germany declared war on the French in 1294, alleging they had seized imperial estates, but he was mocked by Philippe IV and threatened with excommunication by Pope Boniface VIII. The Pope then refused to crown Adolf emperor. Boniface recognized Albrecht as King of Germany, so Albrecht recognized the Pope's authority to grant the imperial crown. Philippe IV of France's emissaries, Philippe de Nogaret and Sire Colonna, retaliated by arresting the elderly Pope in 1303 and beating him. Boniface died just 3 days after he was released. His successor, Benedict XI, made peace with Philippe, but refused to pardon Boniface's 2 captors, and died after eating a plate of dried figs soon afterwards, possibly poisoned. The cardinals and Philippe IV chose Pope Clement V as a compromise, and he moved to Avignon, where he was under the French king's control. Clement was forced to abolish the Knights Templar in 1307, because Philippe wanted to cancel his debts to them. French members of the Templars were accused, tortured, and executed, and their leader, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake in 1314. De Molay cursed the king and pope from the flames. Clement died a month later, and Philippe died in a hunting accident 7 months later. Seeing the brutal demise of the Templars, the Teutonic Knights moved their headquarters outside the Holy Roman Empire and the Pope's influence. The story of the Kingdom of Sicily is a tale of power, intrigue, and shifting allegiances, spanning centuries and involving many notable figures. It began with Roger I, who captured Sicily from the Moors around 1055 and became Count of Sicily in 1071. His legacy was carried on by his young son, Roger II, who faced a decade-long struggle to secure his title as King of Sicily, supported by antipope Anacletus II. Despite initial resistance from Pope Innocent II, Roger II eventually triumphed, expanding his rule to include parts of southern Italy and North Africa. Roger II's reign was followed by his son, Guglielmo I, known as William the Bad, who struggled to maintain control over a restless nobility. His successor, Guglielmo II, or William the Good, made alliances with Genoa and Venice, married Joan, the daughter of Henry II of England, and even attempted to invade Egypt and the Byzantine Empire. However, his efforts were ultimately unsuccessful, and he died in 1189 without an heir. This led to the ascension of Tancredi Fitzroger, an illegitimate grandson of Roger II, who faced immediate challenges. Richard I of England and Philippe II of France forced him to release William II's widow and sister, and to support the Crusades. Meanwhile, Emperor Heinrich VI claimed Sicily in the name of his wife, Constance, Roger II's legitimate granddaughter. Despite initial setbacks, Constance eventually gave birth to a son, Friedrich, who would become King of Sicily after Heinrich's death. Friedrich II, also known as Frederick II, reasserted his power over Sicily and appointed his son, Heinrich VII, as King of Sicily. However, Heinrich's ambitions led to his downfall, and Friedrich's illegitimate son, Manfredi, became the kingdom's administrator. Manfredi faced opposition from the papacy and from Corrado, Friedrich's legitimate son, but he eventually declared himself king in 1257. Manfredi's reign was short-lived, as he was defeated and killed by Charles of Anjou, who bought the crown from Pope Urban IV in 1262. Charles of Anjou, with the backing of the papacy, consolidated his power by executing those who opposed him, including the young Corradino, the last legitimate heir of the Hohenstaufen dynasty. Charles's rule marked the end of the Hohenstaufen era in Sicily, and the beginning of a new chapter under the House of Anjou. The Kingdom of Sicily's history is a testament to the complex political dynamics of medieval Europe, where the interplay between kings, emperors, and popes often determined the fate of nations. From the early Norman conquests to the later struggles with the papacy and the empire, Sicily's story is a rich tapestry of ambition, conflict, and resilience.